AliExpress is one of the weirdest places on the internet. It's one of the best places to buy PC parts for cheap, and it's also one of the best places to get scammed, which is why nobody with a brain would build a fully AliExpress gaming PC. Good thing I don't have a brain. So for the past month, I've been digging through hundreds of AliExpress listings to build the fastest possible $500 AliExpress only PC. And after multiple refunds, interesting conversations with Chinese sellers, and getting my credit card frozen, this somehow ended up being the best price to performance PC I've ever built. So let's start with the heart and core of the PC, the CPU. Currently, the majority of the most popular games in the world are CPU intensive, so this was not a component that I was willing to compromise on. And the rest of the build is going to be budgeted around it, so we can't just pick a trash processor here. But before I even started the challenge, I knew that I was either going to get a Ryzen 5 5600 or a Ryzen 5 5600X. It's just been the meta for these types of budget builds for the longest time, and since they are so similar, the only thing that would make me swing one way or another is the price. So seeing that the Ryzen 5 5600 was gonna drop down to $88.92 in just 2 days, best believe I immediately added that to my cart. Of course, I would have loved to be able to snag a 5600X for $100 or a 5700X for $106, but remember, at this price point, you can't just make a $10 or $20 upgrade like that because it compromises the entire rest of the build. Spending $10 more on what is basically no difference is just not worth it. And as you'll see later in the video, the performance that you get out of the 5600 is insane, and it still leaves plenty of money to spend on the rest of the build. Something that I am willing to compromise on though is the CPU cooler. We are not going to buy a water cooler with a screen for a 5600. So I chose the literal cheapest CPU cooler that still looked usable. Not much to say about it, it's simply the cheapest CPU cooler that would work with the 5600. Another thing that I was also willing to compromise on is the motherboard. Now, if you know anything about PC building, you'll know that even though the motherboard connects every component together, it contributes basically nothing to performance at all. And for that reason, this was the one component that I did not expect to be such a pain in the ass to find. But of course, this was the one component that ended up being a pain in not just one, but both of my cheeks. With the motherboard, usually the only thing you have to worry about is if it's compatible with the rest of your parts. Except I'm on AliExpress, so I also had to worry about getting scammed. If they say they have exactly 10,000 motherboards in stock, they actually have 0, and they're going to scam your dumbass if you buy it. So obviously I went with the cheapest possible motherboard that would still support my Ryzen 5 5600. Again, we are trying to build the most powerful gaming PC using AliExpress, not just a fast one. And if I can save myself another $15 by getting an A320M instead of a B450M, I'm going to buy the cheaper one so we have more money left to spare. The only problem with the motherboard that I chose is that it's very old, so there is a chance that the BIOS version will not support my CPU, even if it says that it does. Now you might think that this is an easy problem to get around since you can just update the BIOS, but in order to do that, you need to build the entire PC and then update it, which is something that I can't do because I don't own any other AM4 CPUs. I simply would not be able to update the BIOS by myself. And so I contacted the seller to ask if he could update the BIOS before he sends it to me. Unfortunately for me, all I got was an automated reply. This was not an actual human responding to me, so at this point I thought I was cooked. I simply cannot take the $40 gamble in case the motherboard straight up doesn't work with my CPU. Luckily, after sending a second message, the seller almost instantly responded back. And to my surprise, he says he's actually able to upgrade it to the latest BIOS before shipping. And then he types out the terms and conditions. Like, what does this even mean? October 1st to October 7th in our country? Who asked? I'm not gonna lie, I was very confused. Like, am I only allowed to place the order on October 6th? The seller then asked me which motherboard I needed as if I didn't already tell him. Did you not just confirm that you could update the Bro, so I sent him the listing again, but this time with the link, so hopefully he would actually see it this time. He then told me that if I make the payment now at this very second, he will ship out the motherboard before the Chinese holiday I was talking about earlier. But after that unnecessarily long ass conversation, he let me know that as long as I make the payment within the next 10 hours, I'll be getting my fully updated motherboard shipped the next day, so that's awesome. The only problem is that I made the biggest mistake I possibly could have made. I sent him the link to the wrong motherboard.
You're stupid!
Now, first glance, you might be thinking to yourself, they look fucking identical. But the one that I sent him was the one that's $2 cheaper. And you'd assume that that's the right one, the one that we picked, because I've been constantly yapping about how we gotta save every single dollar. But what I didn't realize is that the version I sent him was the one without an M.2 SSD slot. It's only compatible with slower SATA SSDs. And for my most powerful $500 AliExpress PC, we cannot be using a SATA SSD. Also, why the fuck is this $1,000? Who the fuck is buying this? Anyways, the point is we need that M.2 slot, but because my dumbass sent him the link to the one that doesn't have it, I made this very respectful man update the BIOS for the wrong board, and that means I have to wait until October 6th for him to update the right one and ship it out. But that's okay, we now know exactly what motherboard we're gonna go with, and for $47.85 including shipping, that is an incredible deal for a motherboard. And that's not to mention the fact that we don't have to pay any taxes, and the shipping cost is only $4. It costs more to ship from the US to Canada, and we're literally on top of each other. Pause. Matter of fact, it costs more to ship from Canada to Canada. What kind of black magic? How is it $4 shipping? Are you bringing it to me on a magic carpet? What the f? But you get the point. How is he shipping this thing across the freaking earth for $4? I wouldn't normally go this cheap. Like I would spend like a good $70 for an AM4 motherboard. But again, this is one place that I'm willing to compromise my money on, and as long as the motherboard works, we got an absolute steal right here. Except we didn't get the CMOS battery, which every motherboard is supposed to have. Hopefully we don't run into any more problems with it later in the video. But of course, the board would be nothing without the RAM, so logically, I tried to find the cheapest RAM possible. For this build to be the absolute fastest $500 AliExpress build, I was not gonna settle on no 2133 MHz RAM. It's usable, but if we just go for 3200 MHz, we're gonna get a whole lot more benefit for not much more money. And looking back at this decision 1 month later, now that RAM prices are going absolutely nuts, this was definitely the right move. But just like the Mobo, the RAM also ended up being one of the harder components to find because of how AliExpress works. On the website, you can have multiple wildly different things under the same listing. So these sellers take advantage of the system and they're essentially able to trick you into thinking that they're selling what you're looking for a way cheaper price. And I got baited multiple times with this method because there's literally no way to know unless you actually click on the listing. And if you don't click on the listing, you might just miss out on the best deal ever. But after half an hour of trying to find the best deal, I think I got it. For $40 each, I was able to fit not just one 16 gig stick into the budget, but two, totaling up to 32 gigabytes of RAM. And these are name brand Kingston Fury sticks too. But you might be wondering why I didn't just go with 16 so I could put that money into a better CPU or GPU. The thing is, a lot of games nowadays use close to and sometimes over 16 gigs of memory. And for this PC to be considered the fastest possible $500 AliExpress gaming PC, it shouldn't be something that struggles just because you want to have Discord running in the background. And on top of that, because of the current RAM pricing situation, I think this decision is going to age well. Like, look at this. Even right now, buying 2 sticks of 16 gigs of the exact same speed DDR4 RAM, it now costs twice the price. We also don't want to struggle to open games or move files around, so we're gonna need a fast M.2 SSD with some decent storage space. And this King Spec 512GB SSD I thought would be perfect for this build. I could have gone with 128 or 256 to save $10 to $15, but I personally do not think that would make sense in a build with this budget. On top of that, the exact same SSD from the same seller now costs $50 instead of $29, so I definitely made the right move getting that 512 gig stick. The only problem with the SSD actually has nothing to do with the SSD, but rather the motherboard slot for it. The motherboard seller sent me the board with the standoff screw missing. So if I try to screw in the drive into the slot, it gets bent like crazy, which is not safe long term. I was able to fix this issue for myself by just using my own standoff screws, but I wanted to let this guy know that he was basically giving out incomplete motherboards. And when I told him about this problem, he did not give a shit and basically told me to fuck off. And you know what? I respect it, because by giving zero shits about his buyer satisfaction, he saved me the money for the most important part of the build. The GPU. Since I've already made a video on a surprisingly good AliExpress GPU before, you might have expected me to reuse the Mughal RX 6600M from that video. It's got some pretty solid performance and it would fit perfectly in this build, especially since it is very efficient, which would allow us to save more money on the power supply. So why did I end up not using it, you might be asking? Well, it's because nowadays you can't find it for under $200. And at this price, it is not only too expensive to fit in the budget, but it's a pretty terrible deal honestly. So I searched around for a new GPU and eventually I stumbled upon this 5700 XT. For $193.01, we're definitely overpaying here. The actual market value is around $120 to $130, and I don't think that this $2 coupon that he sent with the GPU is going to do anything about that. He literally gave me a 1% off coupon. And the best part is that after I left the 5-star review, he didn't give me shit. My guy, I hope you end up in the deepest depths of heaven. You like that positivity? W speed, bruh, W speed. But for the sake of this video, that doesn't matter at all when it performs almost as well as the RTX 4060, which is sold for a much higher price on AliExpress. Even compared to the second fastest GPU I could fit in this budget, the GTX 1080, not the TI, the 5700 XT is newer and more powerful, making it the best performing graphics card on AliExpress under $200. But keep in mind, this would be a terrible value anywhere outside of AliExpress. Like, you could grab a 2080 Ti for the same price on Facebook Marketplace. With our GPU now locked in, it's time to find a power supply for it. And this is by far the scariest PC component to buy, and if there's one part of a PC that I would never buy from AliExpress, it's the PSU. As the name suggests, this thing supplies all the power to your PC. And if you get a faulty one, at best you'll fry every component in your PC, and at worst it's an explosion hazard. Even my main PC's PSU, which cost me over $100, showed signs of failure after just over a year, and I had to replace it. So yeah, you'd probably assume that I wouldn't really trust a $20 AliExpress power supply. And as I've said multiple times, you're pretty much always overpaying for less quality here when it comes to PC parts, so getting a PSU from AliExpress is the one thing I refuse to do for this challenge. I mean, just take a look at the reviews. Even if these were somehow real, none of these people even tested it. Why are you reviewing it before you even use it? So for the one component of this entire PC that we will not be buying from AliExpress because I don't want to burn my house down, I ended up going with this terrible Thermalright PSU from Amazon. Please do not buy this power supply under any circumstance. I only bought this for one specific reason that I'll get to once we add up the prices of all the components. Although it is better than any of the nuclear bombs you'll find on AliExpress at the same price, it is still an F-tier PSU. You'd probably be better off connecting a hamster wheel to your PC than using this stupid ass power supply. Even for a cheap build like this, you should be getting something that's at least C tier. Pick up a CX650M or something. It's not that much more expensive, but it's at least 100 times more reliable. However, with just $6.02 left, you're probably asking how I managed to fit a case and case fans into my original $500 budget. Because with just $6, you can't even buy an open air case, if you can even call it a case. But anyways, the way I was able to do it is because AliExpress always has promotions going on, and in this case, if I spend over $529, which I will, I actually get $65 off my entire order. So in reality, I have a total budget of $565, which leaves us with $71.02 for the case and fans. These are technically the least important parts of the build because you don't necessarily need a case or fans for the PC to function. But I would never be able to forgive myself for building an AliExpress PC without an AliExpress case because this is physically the biggest component of the build. Unfortunately, choosing a case was really only an illusion of choice because almost every case that would fit my specific parts had some ridiculous shipping prices, apart from two of them, and picking between the two was very easy because we obviously have to go with the cheaper one, and that went for the fans as well, which I was able to get 3 of for $867. Now that we have all the parts in our cart, what does that bring our grand total to? Well, without any discounts, our grand total was $563.73, which is below the $565 I was allowed to spend with the $65 discount on the entire order. And that includes both taxes and shipping. But you might remember that earlier I said that I only kept this power supply for one specific reason. And that's because they gave me a $978 partial refund as I was unsatisfied with the product. And that tiny partial refund brought the total cost of the build down to $488.95. But despite my dissatisfaction with the PSU quality, I was very satisfied with how well this PC runs games. Not quite as satisfied with the aesthetics, but who cares? Starting with Fortnite, it gets 750 FPS on an empty map and 300 FPS in-game. Cyberpunk 2077 on the high preset with FSR quality got 103 FPS. Marvel Rivals on the low preset with FSR quality got 102 FPS. And finally, Shadow the Tomb Raider on the high preset with no upscaling gets 148 FPS. So yeah, the results are pretty good for an AliExpress PC, but would I recommend doing this yourself? Not really. CPUs and SSDs are really well priced here, but you can get way better GPUs and cases if you shop literally anywhere else. Regardless, this still ended up being a solid $500 build. The performance is objectively good, despite the fact that it may be the ugliest PC ever assembled. But if you enjoyed this video, you might want to see me test the limits of Nvidia's $4,000 GPU, so watch this video next.